The Yankees and Red Sox are one of the oldest rivalries in sports, and certainly one of the fiercest. For more than 120 years, a heated battle has been waged. Punches have been thrown. Trophies have been hoisted. This year, some combatants are familiar. Others are new. And as the veil is lifted on a new season, so too is a rivalry renewed. And welcome to our special presentation, Rivalry Renewed. We are streaming live on CBS News New York and CBS News Boston. I'm Steve Overmyer in New York.
And I'm Dan Roche here at Yankee Stadium from Boston, of course, but here at Yankee Stadium getting set for what was postponed from today, and it is raining here at Yankee Stadium until tomorrow. Friday at 1, the Red Sox and the New York Yankees go head-to-head in the season opener, the home opener for the Yankees here at Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, this is arguably the fiercest rivalry in American sports. So, Dan, let's take a look at how these two world-class teams match up. The Yankees own the all-time record against the Red Sox with 1,221 wins to the Red Sox 1,007. These games date back all the way to 1903.
And the Boston Red Sox, they've won 9 World Series titles, their most recent one coming in 2018 when they defeated the Dodgers out in Los Angeles to win that series. The Yankees, of course, own a record 27 World Series championships. We hear it over and over and over again in Boston. Their last one coming in 2009 when they beat the Phillies here when they opened the same year that they opened the brand new Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, this rivalry, I mean, look, where do you begin? I guess the only place that you can begin to talk about this rivalry was 1919 at Babe Ruth, because that's where it all started. But, I mean, think about this, Dan. Through the years, you know, our parents, our grandparents have talked about the rivalries, and the names have always changed. It was, at one point, it was Ted versus Joe, and then it was, you know, Bucky and Bill the Spaceman Lee. And every seeming generation has the people they love and the people they hate in this rivalry. And that's why I guess it's one of the fiercest and, you know, most known rivalries in all of sports because of its history.
Yeah, and I think, Steve, when you look back on it, it was dominated by the Yankees for so many years. You know, it was such a hurtful rivalry to Red Sox fans for so many years. You mentioned that, you know, the 70s when they go back to Bill Lee getting hurt at Yankee Stadium, when the Red Sox thought they had one of the better teams that they could finally do it. And then 1978 was the worst. Schools, I remember being in school, let out early that day to watch that, and then to see Bucky Dent, as we all know, Bucky Bleepin' Dent hit that 3-run homer that defeated the Red Sox in 1978. That one hurt for a long, long time. And then eventually we got to 2003, 2004, where the Red Sox finally got their revenge, and everything started maybe rolling in their direction in this rivalry. But it's been great from start to finish. It's just good theater, and now, even now, it's still great theater to watch.
Yeah, and I would say for a lot of Red Sox fans out there, I'm curious if they felt like what happened in '04, because of the way it happened back then, completely changed the narrative and almost made up for the 86 years prior to that.
Well,
if there's any way.
Yeah, I remember back then there was that 86-year-old curse that was, you know, dogging the Red Sox. They hadn't won a World Series title. And then at the old Yankee Stadium, I'll never forget that walk-off home run by Aaron Boone when Grady Little left Pedro Martinez in the game. And then walking into that clubhouse to this day, in all the sports that I've covered, the championships, the tough losses, that was one of the toughest clubhouses I've ever had to walk into. David Ortiz sprawled on the floor in front of a couch. Nobody said a word for so much time. Tim Wakefield finally got to his locker, and he was in tears as he discussed Aaron Boone beating them, and then have them come back in that same place to do it that next year, and to do it in dramatic fashion when they were down 3-0. They win 4 in a row. They finish off the hated Yankees in Yankee Stadium. They were going crazy, and then they rolled to 4 more and end that 86-year-old curse. It doesn't get any better than that for Red Sox fans, and I think they're fine for a while.
Right. Well, I mean, look, for the Yankees fans, I mean, they have a demand to be championship contenders year in and year out. And this last year was another season where, you know, one of the rarities, which is what's crazy about this whole thing, is that the Yankees and Red Sox have only met in the postseason 5 times in their history. Now, of course, a lot of that has to do with the fact that they are division rivals, and that didn't really even begin until within the past 30 years or so to be able to play interdivisionally in the postseason. But last year, the 2021 postseason ended for the Yankees at the hands of the Boston Red Sox. And I think that was such a poignant moment, for the Yankees, because they had brought Garrett Cole in to be that October guy. I mean, Cole is as pure of a #1 ace as you're going to find. And he was brought in to be that October ace. If there was one situation where he was expected to step up and rise to the occasion, it would be a one-game wild card playoff against the Boston Red Sox. Now, Cole had been dealing with injuries at the end of last season, and he only lasted for 2 innings in that game. And I've got to imagine that has been eating at him this entire offseason. But I would imagine their feeling was completely opposite there in the Red Sox clubhouse.
Yeah, and 2 parts to that. One, Cole said, and I'll quote him, asked him how long that lasted with him, that loss, how long it stung. And he said, a little bit, left a sour taste in your mouth. Frustrating game. As a competitor, when you lose, it eats at you. There's a part of me that carries along the scars that we get when we fall short. But at the same time, if it doesn't kill you, it'll make you stronger. So he also went on to say that it's like 2 stags in the forest. One breaks an antler. That's how tough it is with the intensity of the Sox-Yankees rivalry. But that game brought back, I think, a lot of good Red Sox fans' feelings from last year. There had kind of been a staleness because, for the Red Sox, I don't know if the fans knew how to deal with it. They had so much success. 04, 07, 13, and then 18, they won 4 World Series titles. So the fans were kind of maybe not as boisterous as maybe Red Sox players would have liked them to be. But then all of a sudden, this wild card game came out of nowhere. It was one and done against the New York Yankees, and that place was electric that night. It was as good as it was, and some of the people that were at the 03 and 04, the ownership group, everything else said that was an 03, 04 Red Sox-Yankees crowd at Fenway Park. So it was electrifying. Then they had that same thing against Tampa. Unfortunately, they lost in the ALCS, but that one game may have got things rolling in the better direction as far as fans are concerned in this rivalry and in Fenway Park as well.
Yeah, and look, the rivalry is good for both of these franchises. Both teams want this rivalry to build up as great as it is. And then, and now Garrett Cole is getting ready to step to the mound. And ironically, tomorrow at 1 o'clock will be an absolute rematch of what we saw in that wild card game, because it's going to be Garrett Cole against Nate Eovaldi. But what's crazy is that while a lot of the faces are the same on both of these teams, there are a lot of new faces, and it does feel like this is a completely different Yankees team. Now, I understand the heart of the roster is still the same. It's still going to be Judge and Stanton and Rizzo and Gallo. Those are the big boppers that the Yankees fans love to see, but there's also no Gary Sanchez on this roster anymore, no Gio Urshela, no Luke Voit. They have, at the end of last season, Aaron Boone said that the rest of the league has caught up to the Yankees. And at the end of that postseason game against the Red Sox, Brian Cashman even said that the Yankees were unwatchable. It became very clear that the Yankees felt like they needed to make a shift in one direction, and that was a lot fewer right-handed swing and miss guys, a lot more guys who can put bat on the ball, and just a better defensive infield, which they went out and got. Now, I understand that Josh Donaldson, at the age of 36, might not be the MVP candidate that he once was, but the bigger question was going to be, what were the Yankees going to do this offseason at shortstop, with 5 premier shortstops available in free agency, from Correa to Story to Javier Baez was available, Marcus Semien was available, Seager. They ended up going with Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who is a great defensive shortstop who handles the bat very well, puts the bat on the ball. And it just makes you wonder whether or not the Yankees have, again, Dan, even though they still have the boppers in the middle, whether they've made a little bit of a shift to allow for more on-base percentage and more guys who can put the bat on the ball.
Yeah, I think maybe more well-rounded, out of the infield, right? When you look at the changes that they made, bringing Anthony Rizzo back is a big makeup thing for them, too. The good character guy that knows the ins and outs of winning a World Series, which he did with the Cubs. And of course, he was here last year, but still, you got to like a guy like him. As far as the Red Sox are concerned, they're not much different than last year. Eduardo Rodriguez is their big subtraction in the pitching staff, and they can't get Chris Sale healthy. He hasn't been able to pitch really in 2-3 years now. It's just one injury after another, Tommy John, and then he had a rib issue that he still isn't ready to throw. Won't be back until probably mid-June at the earliest with this Red Sox team. They have Evaldi, which is certainly good. That's a good start for them. And then they added Trevor Story. Their offense, they're going to score a ton of runs. They got, Devers, who everyone wants to sign to a lifetime extension. Haven't done him yet. So I think a guy like Devers, Bogarts, and then go along with a guy like Story. They have a very good offense. Their questions are going to be starting pitching in the bullpen as well.
Yeah, run production is not going to be a problem for Boston. Last year, the Yankees were actually 10th in run production, and this was a down year for them, on the offensive side of things. But maybe from the Yankees side of things, the most underrated element of this roster was actually the pitching staff. I mean, there were a lot of people that believe that this was just Garrett Cole and the bullpen, but the rest of this roster was actually fifth in, ballpark rated, or let's see, they had the fifth best park adjusted ERA among starters in Major League Baseball. So it really was an underrated pitching staff. Cole, of course, at the top of that list. Montgomery is steady right behind him. But then there's Severino and Taillon, and we really don't know what we're going to be getting out of Severino and Taillon this year. So there are some certain question marks from the pitching side for the Yankees, but it really comes down to whether or not these guys are going to be able to rise to the occasion and step up in what Brian Cashman has asked them to do.
Yeah, and head-to-head might be important too, Steve. Last year, the Red Sox got up to I think they were 7-0 to start against the Yankees, 9-2, and then it ended 10-9. The Yankees played much better in the second half against Boston, but the Red Sox won that 10-9. Thus, they got home field advantage in that one wild card game. So you never know. I think both teams would like to get off to an early start here, take it to each other, try to come up with some W's early on in the season in these tough April conditions, and kind of go from there. So think about that, too, when it comes to these two rivals and how important it is in a tough AL East with both Tampa and Toronto loaded this year once again.
Yeah, and I'm sure the Yankees would like to do better against the Baltimore Orioles than at 11-8 that they did last season. But you're right. This is about setting the tone. Dan, thank you so much. Once again, first pitch slated for 1:05 tomorrow afternoon at Yankee Stadium. Dan, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, Steve. And again, have fun with this baseball season, everybody out there. My name is Dan Roche from CBS News in Boston.
And I'm Steve Overmyer for CBS News New York. We will see you tomorrow in the Bronx.